don't think I said that, but I'm Meredith. I'm the teacher and librarian over at Irwin, and you are?
I'm Josh George. I am an individuals and societies teacher at Lucille Irwin.
So I kind of like to start by asking you to kind of talk about your life from birth to now and include any books that pop into your mind or, books you loved as a kid or middle schooler or maybe didn't love. That's okay too.
Yes, absolutely. I was born and raised in Colorado, and so spend most of my time in the mountains and doing a lot of outdoor activities. And so that was definitely a big part of my life growing up. I was never, I'm not going to lie, I never was a huge person into books when I was a kid.
Yeah.
When I was a really little kid, I certainly had Magic Tree House and things like that just really caught my imagination because it had them going on adventures and doing a lot of amazing things like that. I remember my mom and my dad reading me a lot of Roald Dahl books, the Witches and the BFG.
Matilda, probably.
Matilda, absolutely. And then watching the movie, it was fantastic to see those things. And as they got into more middle school, I don't know what happened necessarily in terms of the main reason why I just kind of stopped reading a lot of books. I maybe would attribute to sports and being more interested in being outside and doing things like that. But I guess if I had to pin it down, I would say I had a lot of friends that read really, really fast. And I felt like I always was the one that was kind of behind, kind of struggling, kind of to keep up in that respect. And so I kind of maybe attribute some of my less than fun times with books to that. But I had some amazing literacy teachers. I had a teacher that really worked with me in 6th and 7th grade on reading and writing and things like that, and made it more of a less of a struggle, I guess, for me, and more of a something that I felt more confident in.
Mm-hmm.
But I was definitely that kid when it came to standardized tests that everybody else was done and waiting for that last person. I was that last person because it took me so long to read through the passages and answer all of them. But I guess one I feel like I really got back into reading was when I started reading comic books and particularly biographies. I didn't have a whole lot of interest in fantasy at that time, or some of the books that I read now.
Yeah.
It was really getting into people that I really, really enjoyed, some people that I aspired to be like, and those were the people that I found biographies that I really liked.
Do you remember any of them?
What's that?
Do you remember any of the biographies you read?
I remember reading one about one of my favorite music artists of all time, Stevie Ray Vaughan. Being that he died before I even had a chance to really even he died when I was 3 years old, so it wasn't like I had a chance to really grow up with him, I guess. And it was just a matter of just my dad introducing me to his stuff. I read another biography about now I'm going to blank on the person's name, but he's the guy that played Willy Wonka in Willy Wonka.
Gene Wilder.
Wilder, yeah. So he was somebody that I've always admired because he's goofy and silly and just kind of rolls with it. And so I would say that's kind of where my kind of love for reading kind of came, was from those biographies and kind of those entry level, just what do I have interest in, and that kind of, I feel like, what seeped my love of books into my life.
And then, did you know you would go to college?
Pretty early on, yeah. That was definitely an expectation by both my parents. My grandparents also went to college, so I definitely had that pedigree and that kind of reinforcement and that expectation that was going to be a thing. I know that I started, financially planning as well as my parents financially planning for that. So it was definitely always an expectation, and something I also wanted to do as well.
Yeah.
So
did you, when you went to college, did you know exactly what you wanted to do, or did it take a little bit of time?
That's funny because in high school, uh, it was this constant question of what are you going to do when you go to college? What are you going to do when you go to college?
Yeah.
And I almost wish that wasn't such a pressure
Yeah.
because it made me feel like I had to pick something before maybe I was ready. And so I really enjoyed science and thought it'd be nice to make a lot of money. And so I wanted to be a dentist. I kind of enjoyed going to the dentist. It was not something that for a lot of people that
No,
like
you don't
a
hear that
dream.
often.
Yeah. And so I thought I wanted to be a dentist. And I got to college and realized I hated science, at least the science classes I was taking in college. And so I had to do a lot of soul searching. And I kept coming back to my interest of social studies. I had some amazing social studies teachers in high school that kind of made me think outside of the box and made me realize in myself that I don't like answers that you can look up in the back of a book or can easily Google or something like that. I wanted to be able to have a way to kind of analyze and kind of come to the solution, and it may not be the same way that somebody else would view it. And that's kind of where my love for history kind of came. And
Okay.
certainly I appreciate ARC having such cheap history books.
Yeah.
That helped to bring that love even further on.
Yeah.
So,
and then in college, do you remember, like, did you read for pleasure, or did you just read for classes and that's all you had to do? Or
so it depended on like what kind of classes I was taking at that time. Certainly, when I got into my higher level history classes, when we had giant tomes, almost it seemed that we had to read on a regular basis, that would kind of definitely take away from my personal reading time. But sometimes those books would open me up and be like, wow, I would read this in my personal time anyways, because it was so fantastic. I remember I took a history of the national park system, and we just read about the creation of the national parks and the historical significance of certain creations of parks and stuff like that, or
that does sound really interesting.
history of the Wild West and reading about like how all the states around us came to be and the problem with water and things that like I didn't ever think about growing up that seemed to kind of play into my love for cowboys and all the Western stuff on top of it. So
yeah. Do you read any of those Western books, like Louis L'Amour and stuff like that?
Yeah, actually, I don't know if it's by Louis L'Amour, but I remember reading a book called Hondo, and it's also one of my favorite John Wayne books. I've read a few Zane Greys, but in terms of like Westerns, I haven't read a whole lot of Western books. Most of my interest in Westerns have been just the movies and
movie. Okay. So, well, I don't want to rush you. Is there anything else about growing up, maybe, that you want to share?
I mean, I definitely would say that my parents aren't like huge readers. My dad was at moments, but like I felt like someone that kept pushing me to read more and more was my grandma. And so I always think back and like her constantly being like, "Why aren't you reading, Josh? Why aren't you reading?" That like she was definitely an instigator of kind of making sure that I saw the importance in it. That it wasn't just about just reading because it can be fun, but expanding your vocabulary, giving yourself experiences that you couldn't have otherwise.
What did she go to college for?
What did she go to college for?
Yeah, you said your grandparents went.
She was an artist, and so she went to I can't remember the name of the school, but it's like a Kalamazoo in Michigan art school that she ended up becoming a teacher. An art teacher in Kalamazoo for I don't know how long, but a long time. And she actually had some interesting students. She had Derek Jeter as one of her first students when she was younger, and so that was super cool to me. That like my love for baseball, and then my grandma got to teach him art way back when.
Oh, that's pretty neat. So, what do you read these days?
I have I found a few authors that I feel like really kind of hit the, strike a chord from. So I've found like my niche for, and that would be like Michael Crichton. He is such a great author in terms of like creating this like real life scenarios, but very otherworldly things with Jurassic Park, or my favorite book, Prey, where it's all about these micro, nanoparticles that they've taught to kind of almost be this like sentient being kind of thing, and it just captures my
Okay. So Michael Crichton, and then I think you froze, or I froze, or I have bad internet. Sorry.
Either way.
Okay.
Just Michael Crichton and all of his amazing work. I would also say that I've gotten really into a historical author named Stephen Ambrose. He did The Band of Brothers.
Okay.
And he just does a ton of stuff around American war history. One that I'm currently reading is called is it called Undaunted Courage? It's about Lewis and Clark and their journey.
Okay.
And that one it's really good because it's not your typical history book where it's super dry and it just gives you tons of details that have no meaning. He does it more as like a narrative.
Oh, so nice. I like that.
You're part of the history itself instead of just being given facts left and right.
Yeah. You have a very well organized bookshelf.
I do like to keep a little bit of order so that when I do go to grab a book, I kind of know where to go. But
what are some of your favorites back there?
Probably my favorite. Let's see here. This one right here. I'll start with this one. I've always, I guess, movies have been a huge part of my life too, and so like finding movies that were originally books have always been important. So this is one of the first books that really got me into it, which is Live and Let Die.
Yeah.
The James Bond book. And this was one of my favorite James Bond movies growing up. And when I read this book, I was like, holy smokes. When they say, the book is better than the movie, like this is the epitome of that. And so like kind of going through that process and then reading Harry Potter and realizing, wow, okay, they are, again, better than the movies.
Yeah.
Or, reading Game of Thrones and feeling the same kind of things like that. Like, why didn't they add that? Or why did they change this and that or whatever? So I guess that's also been fun for me just to see how the, artistic interpretations get changed.
Has there ever been a book that you've read first and you were really excited for it to be made into a movie and then disappointed? Or TV show?
I would say probably it might be in a different spot, but the one I would say is Ready Player One. I read that, loving the idea of like, this like 80s kind of setting with video games, but then like somewhat distant future kind of setting as well. And, the movie was not bad.
Right.
But I just had these lofty ideas of, oh my gosh, they could do this and this and this and how they might do this and that. And then when it came down to it, like it was still a great movie. I enjoyed it, but they just omitted so many important moments for me that I felt that was like, darn it.
I know. Yeah. I've had that too. And then it's just so sad because in your head you build up what you want it to be. And
right. And you have these visual images as you're reading that like you expect it to be that way when it's in the movie form, and it's completely different. And sometimes it's a good thing, and sometimes it's like, that's lackluster.
Yeah. Yeah. What else do you love over there?
Let's see here. I'll grab that one. Oh, I do have Ready Player One right there. Oh yes, this one. It's probably so. These are two books that I've read fairly recently. Dune. Speaking of a movie that's coming out soon.
Okay. I don't know what
this
that
is amazing book. It was recommended to me a long, long time ago. About these individuals that get move to this sand planet, and they have these, mining operations, but there's this giant galactic thing that's trying to take them down so they can take the mining rights, and it's
So
just
is that
it's just
like science
adventure.
fiction?
Huh?
Is it
Science fiction. Definitely.
okay? I don't know that one, and I love
Yeah.
science fiction.
Yeah, Dune is fantastic. It's has had many sequels and prequels and stuff like that, and writers that aren't Frank Herbert have tried to do their own spin on sequels or whatever. And I've not read those. My old roommate just kept bugging me. You got to read Dune. You got to read Dune. You got to read Dune. And then finally, I found it at ARC, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna finally read it. And I understood. I understood exactly what he meant. It was an amazing, just science fiction story that kind of captures you immediately.
Okay, I will add that to my list because I really like science fiction, but I'm not familiar with that book.
And then another one that again that just is more historical. This one is 1776. Okay. This is all about basically how George Washington and our founding fathers almost didn't win the American Revolution, and all the times where our country was sick and tired of George Washington and wanted to have him gotten rid of as our general and things like that. And so for me, I love American history, especially that time period where the creation of our country came to be. And so kind of having that glimpse of, wow, I didn't realize, we're grown up to believe that George Washington is this almost godlike figure.
Yeah, could do no wrong.
Yeah, exactly. But in a lot of his military career, he was not always appreciated. He was not always seen as the right guy, but he kept being given chances and kept having these like minor victories that helped them to continue to kind of have a little bit of hope. And then, obviously the rest is history in terms of how we view him now.
I would maybe be interested in reading that because when Hamilton came out this summer, so that you could watch it during the pandemic, which have you seen it?
It's fantastic.
Okay, it's so good. And I had heard people talk about it, and I knew it was going to be good. I didn't realize how little I knew about those people, about that time period. Like you think you know. And maybe I was taught that, and because I was a kid and I wasn't paying attention, I'm sure that's what it was. But yeah, Tyson and I had to look up a bunch of stuff. We had to look up time frames. We had to look up, basically relearn history. And so I would really be interested in reading that one.
And I would say too, I would say I didn't know a lot of that stuff. I have an invested interest already, and I have done a lot of research on that. And so I watched it with my mom and my grandma, and they were throwing questions at me left and right. And I'm like, I know some of these, but I can't answer all of them. Like, pause it. Let me look it up. Goodness.
Yeah.
But I would also say that it's a time period where I feel like at least a lot of our introductions to that in school or through textbooks and things like that, where they kind of gloss over some of the more like fun or the awe-catching moments of that time period, and just kind of because there was a lot of things that I didn't know. So I felt it was a nice medium to kind of have exposure to that stuff.
It was amazing. And Tyson and I kept saying, what's the guy's name that wrote it? Lin-Manuel
Miranda.
Okay. Like how does someone take an idea like that or read a little blurb of history and then come up with all of that? It was just unbelievable. So I don't know.
Well, the fact that it was so, capturing. It captures your imagination so quickly, and then it is historical, and it is, such a foundational moment in, our country's history, and then it makes it fun and a musical on top of it. So
yeah, and the cast was fantastic. And then I started following the different actors and musicians because a lot of them were new to me, and what a great experience.
I'm hopeful that other streaming services recognize that was a pretty cool opportunity, that there are more musicals and plays and things like that in our homes, because it is so hard for us if we don't live in New York City or even Denver to have access to some of those amazing works.
Yeah. So are you, do you read one book at a time, or what are your reading habits?
For a long time, it was like I can't possibly fathom reading more than one thing at a time. Like that was just like I can barely keep focus on one thing at a time. Like how could I possibly expand to so many things at a time? And now I don't know what happened, but it's I have my hands in probably 5 or 6 different books right now.
Yeah.
I'm trying to finish up the Fellowship of the Ring again
Okay.
for Lord of the Rings. I'm reading a book called The Monuments Men. It was also made into a movie, and that's kind of why I picked it up.
Yeah.
It's kind of lost my interest a little bit. It's a great book, but at some moments it gets too much into the minutia of it that I'm like I want to know more about Nazis stealing these things.
I know. Does that have like a red cover on it?
It might. The copy I have just has just a simple.
Oh, okay. Scholastic had one at the book fair. Maybe they've changed it a little bit for young adult readers. Or maybe it's the same book with a different cover. But I saw that, and I was Susie and I are really interested in reading that one when it comes back through.
No, it's definitely, it's large, and I'm about 3/4 of the way in.
Yeah.
But it definitely captures my imagination, but it got to like a stalling point where it's like I want to know more about these Nazi strongholds that have stolen this piece of art, this piece of art, and this piece of art, and kind of get to the knit and grit. And sometimes they go into these like this major went this way and this person went this way, and it's like that part of it is not what I want to read about.
But. Okay. So you're reading Monuments Men, Fellowship of the Ring. What else?
I'm constantly reading my favorite comic books. I've put on hold for a long time the end of The Walking Dead.
Okay.
There's like 3 comics left, and I've just been like, I don't want it to end yet, so I'm not going to read those.
Do you do that a lot?
No, I honestly hate that I'm doing that because it drives me nuts when I hear people do that. And so I'm like, I can't believe I'm doing it myself because it's not that I want things to end. It's just usually I'm like, why would you deprive yourself of something that has brought you so much joy just because you don't want it to end? But it's like at the same time, like I understand now.
Yeah, I do that. I do that especially with series, like TV series, or sometimes books. Like I just can't read the last chapter or watch the last few episodes because I love it so much and I don't want it to be over.
Yeah, exactly. And I have a friend, the same friend that told me to read Dune. He does that with everything, and it just drove me nuts when I was his roommate because I'm like, dude, how can you not watch the end of this show, or how can you not like do like how can you not read the epilogues of books? He always does that too. I'm like, don't you want to know what like the ending is? Like,
yeah.
Now I know.
Okay. I know that you love music. Do you read books about like bands, or do you read biographies about artists now?
So outside of the one around about Stevie Ray Vaughan, I haven't read one in a long time. I have. I don't know if it's a autobiography by Eric Clapton that I've had sitting up there for a really long time. That eventually, at some point, I'm going to pick up and just love. I know because him and Stevie Ray Vaughan were a huge part of me getting into the blues, and for a long time, that was about the only music I listened to. So, but other than that, I don't have any necessarily like musical books that I have currently. I do have some. I don't think I have them with me, but I have these really cool old records that had like a 45 that you could put on the record player and then read along with it.
Oh.
My grandma had a few, and then I found a few in random places. Then I have never really done anything with them. I just thought they were so cool that you'd have this little 45 that you could put on the record player and then read along. I thought it'd be really cool for like a kid learning to read or something. So
it's like the start of audiobooks. Yeah.
Right, exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. So I just the concept of it made me think, oh, this is so cool that I can't help but buy it,
Yeah.
but I haven't really done anything with it.
Yeah, I do that too. Probably everybody does. Like, it's just so neat. You want to have it just in case. Um, oh, there was another question I was going to ask you. Oh, cookbooks. I want to know if you collect cookbooks because I know you're a chef.
I am definitely on my way. I
Yeah.
don't have like an absorbent amount, but I do have a collection, and I do have in my kitchen a nice little like on top of my counters a space that I can like almost like display them around the kitchen.
Yeah.
So yeah, I have one that actually Stacy gave me, a John Wayne cooking book that
Oh, cool.
just full of fun comfort foods that has a bunch of really fun stuff. And then one that I guess started it all for myself, I guess, was through a Secret Santa through the internet, a Reddit Secret Santa, if you've ever heard of that. I told the random person in the world that I really enjoyed a lot of things that are nerdy and cooking and things like that. And so they got me a cookbook of all these like Harry Potter and Lord of the Rings and Star Wars and things like that, different recipes for that.
Yeah.
They have like a way to make like lambis bread from Lord of the Rings, or like blue milk from Star Wars. And
I remember when you got that and how excited you were.
Yeah. I think I brought over those pumpkin treats from Harry Potter.
Oh, those were so good. I loved those. Have you made anything else from that cookbook?
No, not in a while. I don't think so.
Okay.
I definitely want to pull it out and want to try one of the drink ones. They have a ton of like random drinks, and they all sound really ridiculous but fun.
Yeah, I wonder what the Star Wars blue milk one would be. Like
that one, I'm not a huge fan of milk to begin with, so I can't remember if it was like a dairy base, but just the idea of having the ability to taste something,
from Star Wars,
similar to what they would have had in Star Wars is just
that like I like to do that kind of thing with my kids, and we'll do, especially now that we're home all the time. Have those theme nights where I know we're going to watch the movie and I will wear a t-shirt and we'll make something. And that's what I would do with your friends or your roommates.
A nice pairing. It just makes the experience that much more fun.
And memorable, right? Like it's like an event. And so that's fun.
And I'm sure, especially for your kids, they really enjoy it as well.
Yeah, I think so. We haven't done one in a while. So Ryder would love to do a Star Wars one though. So and then the other thing I was going to ask, because you've been to Africa, which is a really long plane ride, do you read on the planes, or what do you do?
I do. I find that that's times where I've had the most opportunity to read and have, the want to read, I guess, too. It provides an opportunity for so much opportunities to read. Yeah. When I went to Africa, I was actually reading a lot of books of the country I was going to, just so I had, a little bit more background, because I asked my friend that I was going with, like, I know you've read a lot about it, so like, what are some books that you would recommend? And so he gave me a list of different books, and he'd already given me one about Africa that just solidified even more why I wanted to go to Africa. It was kind of like a memoir. I think it was called like the Primates Memoir. Okay. And it was just this anthropologist that studied baboons and habits of baboons and all the crazy adventures that he went on and things like that. And so that was really fun, and just like seeing, an American experiencing all the things of Africa and all the fun and also the craziness that can kind of come along when you're there for many years.
Yeah. So. I like to do that too. When I know that I'm going to go somewhere, obviously I read, like the fact books and what's their currency and religion and all that stuff. But then I try to find like poetry or authors so that I can read, or magazines. I remember when we went to Scotland, I found a bunch of Scottish magazine publications so that I could read, and just, I don't know. I love that part. That to me is almost as much fun as traveling, is doing the planning and then reading the stuff from the different cultures and listening to music and stuff like that.
Well, and certainly I know for myself, when I'm getting pumped for something like a concert or something, I'm, listening to that artist over and over and over as I'm getting ready to go, or it exacerbates how much excitement you're going to have.
Yeah. Again, making it into a bigger event and,
Right.
and living
Exactly.
with it. Yeah. How fun. I can't think of anything else. Is there anything else you want to share about reading?
No, I just want to thank you for doing this because, like I said, not to throw shade on my parents, but they weren't the ones that were always reading. And so having, someone that's putting, content out there, putting things out there so that, you can see how important reading is and how necessary it is for so many aspects of your life. I wish that I had that push a little bit sooner, because I think reading is so important because it is more than just the fact that you're reading.
Yeah.
It can be so much more if you allow it to be.
Yeah.
You can find that niche of books and stuff like that.
I love that. It can be more if you allow it to be. It's been so much fun to do this, and each person has brought something new. Like Mike really talked about how he loves to read to escape, and Nick talked about he likes to read to learn. That's his primary goal, is what can he get out from it. And I did Alyssa yesterday, and she really talked about how she didn't love reading growing up. It took her a long time, almost college years and adulthood, for her to really see reading as something that could be a hobby and a joy. And then this has been so different and so wonderful, and it's fun. I just want kids to know that, yes, we make you read for school, but lots of people read to add on to their knowledge of concerts or travel or everything you said. So thanks for doing this with me, giving up your Saturday.
Anytime. I like I said, I think this is such a great idea that I'm all for it.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun to get to know people a little bit better. Well, thank you for inviting me into your home, and I hope you have a great Saturday.
Yeah, you too. Thank you, Meredith.
Yep.